Welcome back to Excel for Economics. In this video, we're going to be talking about text and manipulation and cell reference. So things like length, which gives you the number of characters in a string, find, search, concatenate, left, mid, right. And then text to columns, relative and absolute positions, F4 to toggle between relative, absolute, and partial absolute positions. And then define a name. So let's go to our Excel file. And here we can see that we've got a string of names, and then we've got a number of things that we want to do. First, let's deal with the operators themselves. So we want to look at len, which gives me the length. And it just says, give me the text you want the length of. Well, I want a 8, Control Enter, and I can see that this is 13 characters long, 21. And this is useful if I need to find a certain position in here. I can find things. So let's say here I want to find, and then it asks me, what do I want to find? Well, what I want to find is I want to know where the commas are in this string. And then within what text? Well, I want A8. And I can start number. If I wanted to change where it starts looking, so let's say I wanted to start at the third letter or fourth letter, then I can provide that. But we can leave it blank as well. So the default will be that it'll start with the first observation, the first character. Okay, click OK. We got the 7th, which makes sense because Belcom has 6 characters and then a comma. So it'll give me the position of the 7th character. If I want to do a search, let's say I want to search for the letter L. And so I'm going to say search, find the text, L, within what? Within A3, and I don't, A8, and I don't need the start number. And I say, okay. And it'll give me third, because Balcom starts with BAL. And you can see that it gives me a value, number value, if it doesn't exist. Okay, so there's no L in Harris Coretta. Now, if I want to concatenate two things together, now, actually, just before we go to that, find is case sensitive. So if I wanted to search for L, it finds it on the third character. But if we look at this carefully and we say, well, what if there's an uppercase L, like in Lofton? Here it says, I didn't find a lowercase L. Here it says, I found an L, whether it's uppercase or lowercase. So this can be a distinction that you need, whether it's case sensitive or not. So it's not case sensitive in case of search, and it is case sensitive in terms of find. Okay, so we'll just switch this back to comma. Now, concatenate means I can just attach things together. So concat, what's my first text string? Well, I want the length. And then I can put in strings that I just want to add myself. So I could say, quote is awesome, quote, and then I can say the actual person's name, and you can see that it just keeps on adding, and I can add quite a few of these, up to 254 of these. Okay, and now I can do that for all of these, and it'll give me that first length, the character string that I gave it, and then this. Okay. Next, I want to find out, I want to grab the first 3 characters on the left of the of Balcom, which should be BAL. So I do left, the thing I'm interested in, and a bracket 3. If I want the right, I just simply do right, comma 3, and that'll give me the yth. And if I want the mid, this, and I want to start on the third and give myself 3 characters. Start on the third, number of characters to grab is 3. and that will give me LCO. Okay. And then from these, I can simply Control Enter to get the full string. Okay. So now how can we break up this list using some of these commands? So the first one will be the name. Well, what do I need to do? I need to find the last name, which is everything up until the comma. So I would go, so it starts from the left, so I can go left, and then this value. And how many character strings do I need? Well, I need to find the comma in this thing, and that'll give me the comma value, but it's going to include the comma if I try to include it. So I want to -1 off of that, and that'll give me Balcom. Now, if I want to get the first name, what do I need to do? Well, this one's kind of complicated because I'm going to have to grab everything afterwards, but what if there's a parentheses in this? Okay, if there's a parentheses, then I want to go to a mid. Okay, now luckily I have the code written out, and what we'll do is we'll just go through it. Okay, so first thing I want to do is, does it have an error? So glyph is the output. So if this is an error, then it will give the first argument. Okay, if it is true, then it'll give the second argument. So what is this searching for? The first argument is trying to find the parentheses and trying to find the position of the parentheses. Okay, since it didn't find one in here, it's going to default back to this side, which is just taking the right up to the point where you get the comma in the argument minus the length. Okay. If we're looking for the common name, well, what do we need to do here? Well, this one doesn't have a common name, but let's go to one that does. So here again, we're going to search for this open parentheses. And if we don't find it, then we're just going to put in blanks. Okay, this is how you put in blanks, by putting two double quotes together. Otherwise, we're going to say, well, we want the mid. We want a text string where we find the mid of this, starting where we find the open parentheses. Where did we find it? Position 16. And then the number of characters up until the close parentheses we find by taking the full length and then subtracting off the position of the open parentheses, -1. And that'll give us Susie, Mary, Dee, Steve, and Anne. Now, if we want to concatenate things, here we just concatenate, and let's say we want to put the common name in the parentheses, then we're going to have something which will do two things. Okay, so if there's a common name, then we want one thing, and if there isn't, then we don't. So we'd say if we want to count blank. Okay, this is another function, and that will come back as true if it's blank, false if it's not. So if it's true, we just want to concatenate. Okay. We want to concat our first name, D8, or D8, comma, a space in there, So it is blank, so it's just going to add a space and then our last name. Now, if it's false, what do? We would have to concat again, D8, comma, and then we were going to space because we want the open parentheses, comma, our common name, open, close parentheses, space, quote, and now our last name. Okay. And we missed a parentheses at the end. And now we have our names in our format that we want. Common name or first name, we can then choose if we want to. Now, another way of breaking this up is to use the text to columns option. So under data, text to columns, and now you have to delimit it with something. So we're going to delimit it with a comma, and we finish. Okay, so, but now we still have the common name to delimit. So we do it again. This time we delimit. Now there isn't any open parentheses here, so we have to tell it it's an open parentheses. Then say next and finish. And now we just have to remove, so by Control H, find what? A close parentheses and replace it with nothing. And we replace all. So here we had to use Control plus H in order to remove the close parentheses. So this is another way of doing it. Now, seems to work well for names, but if you had something which actually had a lot of commas in it, like let's say Susie was the name of Susie had a comma in it for some reason, then this approach would not work at all, and you'd have to go back to something similar to this and be robust to extra commas throughout. The other thing we want to look at is the referencing. Okay, here I want to sum A8 through A6, so I say sum this one, Control Enter, and you can see that it just adds this value. Now, if I want an absolute position, I say sum here. Now, how do I get an absolute position? Well, I need to put dollar signs in. So I need to put a dollar sign in here and a dollar sign in here. And what that says is that A will always be the case and 8 will always be the case. A quicker way of doing this is to use F4, which will toggle through, forcing the values to stay the same. And now everything is 0 because all of them are the same equation. Now partial sums or partial absolute. So here we have the sum, and again, we're just going to do A8. But this time, what we're going to do is toggle this one so it keeps A8 for the first value, and A8 can, in the second position, can now change. And if we go down here, we can see that A8, with the dollar signs, the absolute position has remained, but now we've got an expanding summation that's occurring as we go through. Now, the last thing we have is the user-defined names. So we can actually name a region, okay? So we can take this and we can say define name. And we can name it, let's call it data 1, okay? And you can see you can have a comment in here, you can workbook, you can have a reference, among other things, okay? That one already exists. So we'll call this one Steve 1. Okay. And then we can name this one Steve 2. Define name, Steve 2. And it's defined the reference, it's given absolute position. So now I can do the operators just bringing in this data set itself. So I can say the sum product, Steve 1, comma, Steve 2, Steve 2. And you can see that it highlights these two areas for me, and I can get my 21. I can also ask how many rows. Rows in Steve 1. I can ask how many columns. In Steve 1. And it says there's 1 column. So these can be useful and simplify your code if you're doing a lot of summations over a certain region. Great, and we'll see you in the next video.